Hello, Hero Collectors here. How's it going, everybody? Hope y'all are doing fantastic. I know I am, and today we're going to be doing a quick fire review of these 5 Marvel Legends X-Men figures. We have Destiny and Rogue. They came in a 2-pack together. We have Banshee, who came in the mini comics wave. And then we have Jean and Professor X from the Savage Land. Those two were both Target exclusives. They did not come together, but they were both the same type of release. So I had a bunch of X-Men figures that I don't really have a lot to really get into with them. So I figured a quick fire review would be best, just to kind of give my quick thoughts. If you haven't seen one of my quick fire reviews before, I will not be going over articulation, only in regards to a point I'm trying to make, like say if this articulation's bad or if this articulation's really great. I will give my just brief overview of the figure, then give my final thoughts with pictures. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, starting off the review, we're just going to go with Destiny and just kind of go in the line that I had in the intro. So taking a closer look at her, she is on the pinless base body, the Shriek body, I believe, just with a new upper torso, and then the new cape and head, which the cape is shaded on the back, but not shaded on the front. I know that's a point of contention with some people. I understand that issue, but I still think it looks okay from the front, although it would have allowed for some color differentiation in, by having that, since these blues are the exact same on the cape and the torso and arms. And then you got the big head with the shiny gold there for the face. That looks really good. It's kind of that effect that the marbleized plastic has, but this is actually painted on. In terms of accessories, she only has a set of fists and a set of pretty standard female wide open hands. Those all hinge down and up. It comes with no other accessories, which is kind of a bummer. I will talk about that in my final thoughts here in a minute. The cape is kind of restrictive going up, but honestly, if you are still trying to get her to touch her head, you can still do that. It's not as restrictive that way, but if you're trying to make her, reach up higher, it's not going to work. And yeah, she does have a ball and hinge here at the neck, so that is not hindered at all. I do like that they are still implementing that into newer molds for figures. But yeah, I really don't have anything else to say about this body. All the paint came out clean. I have no real other issues, so let's get into my final thoughts. So my final thoughts on Destiny are she just didn't come with enough accessories. I think the figure on its own is pretty solid. It's the look I was wanting, and they nailed it pretty perfectly, aside from maybe the shading that we talked about. But in terms of accessories, she could have come with a book. She could have come with a hand that had a pencil so that she could be writing in said book, an alternate head where she's unmasked, a grip hand with a crossbow. I did actually do the book and the crossbow, and I had to steal a Heist Nebula grip hand in order to do that, but even that didn't peg all the way into the arm. So, I know they have a grip hand. It would have just been a matter of actually molding it in this color. I was able to make do for the pictures, and eventually I will have her with a book in my display, but it just would have been, these are all things that they already had, except for the unmasked head. The book, crossbow, and grip hand are all things that they already have in their library, so it just would have been a matter of recoloring them or just repacking, you know what I mean? So I think that's this figure's biggest fault. Otherwise, it does the job it needs to. It looks really good next to Mystique figure. I'm very excited to get the upgraded Mystique, and these two will be pinless together, and it'll look even better. In terms of fun factor, I'm going to say no. It's not the most dynamic of figures, and the fact that she doesn't have those accessories makes it less fun. And then for a final rating, I'm going to give her a 7 out of 10. She does the job she needs to, but does nothing more. I would say try to get it on sale. I think I got this 2-pack on sale for $25, so it wasn't too bad. It was 25 or 35, I can't remember. So I got a deal on her. But if you were paying full price, I don't think you're going to quite get your money's worth. Moving on here to Rogue. From what I understand, this is her Brotherhood look, so this is going to be going on my X-Men villain shelf, because I've got a bunch of Rogues, and I really wasn't sure where to put this one, but that would be a good spot. She is pinless as well, that same Shriek mold on the arms and the legs. She's got that little green detailing for the costume. On the legs, it's just painted on the forearms. It is a separate overlay piece that has paint. And then, you come up to the head. She's got a nice kind of smirk, kind of evil expression with the skunk stripe going back. And then getting into the torso. I hate this articulation scheme. I really do. I wish Hasbro would stop doing it. I understand why they do it. It's not to, so they don't break up the actual sculpt and look of the costume. It's an action figure. That's going to happen. So I would have really liked to have seen this get a diaphragm cut there and maybe an ab crunch there, since they already, kind of worked that in. That would have been amazing for this rogue, because whenever they do this, it's always severely arched, so they're hard to stand. They look weird. They've got like the duck butt thing going on, so the butt's always sticking far out. It's just not my favorite articulation scheme, and it doesn't allow for a lot of range, actually. So as you can see, she doesn't even go forward that much, and back, she can kind of twist and not much tilt. It is not a good point of articulation. Please stop doing this, Hasbro. And then, she only has a ball here at the neck, so her head doesn't even go very high up or down, and that's not good for a rogue figure because she can fly. So those are probably my biggest points of like bad for the figure. Just kind of out of the way. I'll talk a little bit more about it in the final thoughts. But much like Destiny, as long as I don't keep dropping them, she comes with the exact same set of hands, that standard, open set of female hands. Those are her only accessories. I'll talk more about that in final thoughts. But yeah, that is basically it for Rogue. Again, just pretty simple base body, not a lot of accessories, and I don't care for this torso. So what are my final thoughts? Just this 2-pack in general needed more accessories. I don't know what you could have added to Rogue to make her, better, aside from like an extra head. So just like maybe an expression where she has good gritted teeth would have been nice. I'm always wanting options. If every figure, in my opinion, should have fisted hands or kind of open, relaxed hands, and then 2 expressions, one more neutral or like happy, and one more angry and in battle. It always gives me more options to display and take photos. So when a figure doesn't have that, that's usually my first point, is an extra head. Now this Rogue, she comes with a set of hands I'd like. I don't know what else they could have added aside from maybe flesh hands, but I have a bunch of those, so that's not a real big deal. The torso is the biggest problem with this figure. It is awful. I hate that they keep doing it. It's coming on the Marvel Girl Jean Grey, but that figure at least has new upgraded legs, so that the old Marvel Girl figure it's just crap. Like, it has pinned legs that are jelly. So at least that new one will be better than the previous Marvel Girl, but I don't want to see this torso articulation anymore. It does not allow for movement. You might as well just mold the torso and waist together at that point. It does not do much for a figure. In terms of fun factor, surprisingly, I did have fun. I wasn't expecting to, but once I kind of got her posed up with other figures, it really just came to life for me. It was still difficult to pose her, but I did have fun. In terms of a final rating, I'm going to give her a 6 out of 10. The torso articulation is what brings it down. She could have been a 8 out of 10 if she had better articulation in the torso. I don't really have much else to add there. It's a rough Rogue figure. And now we move on to the Mini Comics Wave Banshee. And I really thought about doing an Irish accent to really start out this segment, but I didn't want to do it and be offensive. So I can do kind of an Irish accent, but it's rough. So anyway, here we have Banshee looking pretty solid. This is the costume I was wanting. I never got the 3-pack version or the original version of this costume. I do plan to backtrack and get that 3-pack version to go with my Generation X figures, but yeah, he's looking pretty good on the base Vulcan mold, which is always a solid mold. Now, of course, we have the wings here. A lot of people don't care for these wings. I didn't have any issues with them in terms of my posing. I can understand it's not the best material, so it could tear over time. So I understand. It is not a perfect system, but it's one that I didn't have too much of a problem with. I think this is probably the worst part of it, is the fact that it's not painted on both sides, so you get that off, faded look. Not really much else to say about the figure itself. It's on a solid base body. There's no articulation that I feel like he needed. All the paint looks pretty good, despite it being, yellow, splotch there and whatnot. But face looks really good. And speaking of faces, he does have an alternate screaming head, which looks really good. It does change up the actual hair sculpt. He doesn't have the sideburns when he has this head, but it doesn't bother me too much. It looks pretty solid. And this is the same head that came with, both of these came with that 3-pack version. You can notice that he does have a set of fists on him, but he also does have a grip hand for the left. As you can see, it's a C grip that goes side to side, and then a trigger finger for the right, which is odd. I understand the grip hand because of an accessory in a second, but this is weird. And that one also goes side to side. Then we have a wide open hand, which, I would have taken another wide open hand for the left side over the trigger finger. Then, of course, the final accessory is his mini comic of Giant Size X-Men #1, which is solid. I plan to actually read this run, or this issue, and then the run following it with Claremont in just a few months. It'll be my first time reading it. I'm very excited. So yeah, there is all the accessories for Banshee. And yeah, I don't have much else to say, so let's go into my final thoughts. So my final thoughts are, this is an excellent Banshee figure. I understand if you don't care for the wings. That's a completely valid argument. I know a lot of people don't like the tags that hold the wings on. Those don't bother me too much. They didn't really affect my posing or the vibe I had when I was posing him around. Overall, this is the costume I was wanting for Banshee, and I think they did a great job of executing it here in figure form. It's just a solid overall figure. I had a great time with it. The posing is great. I love that they actually gave him a screaming head, unlike Siren, who really deserves a screaming head. Yeah, I really don't have much else to say. It is a really well executed Banshee figure. In terms of fun factor, oh yeah, I really like this figure. The posing was great. I had a few reference images that I was trying to do for a flight pose to make it more dynamic. He just went right into the pose and it looked fantastic. I just had to get the right angle on the picture. It was a good time posing this Banshee. And then for final rating, I'm going to give him an 8.5, maybe a 9 out of 10. It's a really good figure. I don't know what else they could have added aside from maybe another relaxed hand that would have improved him. Maybe a pipe, but I don't think Hasbro can do that with the action figures. So I'm not going to harp on that one too much. Overall, I really like this Banshee. All right, now on to X Factor Jean Grey, and I gotta get it out of the way. She has no boots. The humanity. No boots. It didn't bother me too much. I don't know this costume very well. I understand the argument, and I will just, yes, that is a problem. Hasbro should have caught that when it was happening. It's an oversight. That is a serious slight on this figure. Otherwise, it's pretty great. I really like this figure. She has the super articulation, so she's got the butterflies, and then the double torso here with the crunch and the rocker here. Sorry. And I really like this head sculpt. She does have a ball peg at the neck, so she doesn't quite get the range you would want up and down, but she gets a pretty decent range. Yeah, I really like this head sculpt. She does have another one. We'll go over that here in a second. But yeah, otherwise, she is a pinless figure. The paint looks pretty decent. A little spotchy here on the sides, but otherwise okay. Come around to the back so you can see all that. Looks very clean. And yeah, so in terms of accessories, she has a set of fisted hands and a set of wide open hands, the same ones we've seen a couple times in this video. And then she also has this alternate head, which is fine. It's accurate to the costume from the comics. I've, seen the images of it. It looks good, but it's not my favorite head of the two. I like this one more. And then her last accessory is this sigh effect. It just kind of slides in here underneath the hair. I said it slides in underneath the hair. It's like there. it just kind of tucks in there and stays in place, and you can use it for any, kind of photo you want or just display you want. I probably will display it like this on the shelf with my X Factor Cyclops. But yeah, there is that. It does not work on the other head. It can only work on this one because of the hair, unless you use like blue tack or something. So I really don't have much else to say about this figure, so let's go into my final thoughts. My final thoughts are that I had fun with this. I wasn't expecting to because, it's not a costume that I really know for Jean. It's, a team that I didn't really intend to like I didn't get into collecting Marvel Legends to, I need the X Factor looks for the X-Men. I'm not familiar with these costumes. Maybe I will be, soon when I go and actually read the X-Men stuff from this era. But, I think it's a well executed figure except for the boots. I can't not acknowledge the boots. That is a problem. But despite that issue, I still had fun with this figure. I'm not going to really do anything to fix this figure or buy a new release if they ever do fix this, because I'm satisfied with what I have and I don't want to buy another of this costume. I'm already going to have to buy the repaint of this look where she's in red instead of the green. So, it is what it is. But aside from that, I think the accessories are solid. I think that she looks great. She poses really well. Overall, a solid figure. She does have the fun factor. I did have a lot of fun posing her, and when, I first put her on the table, I was like, okay, here's a picture, okay. And then it just kind of slowly was like, ooh, here's an idea, here's an idea. It just, that creativity started flowing, and I did have a good time really posing her around. Then for a final rating, I want to give her an 8 out of 10. But I know I can't because of the boots, so I'm going to give her a 7 out of 10. I think she's been going on sale at Targets, or she's in abundance at Targets, so maybe she will go on sale later on. If you can get her at discount, it's a great pickup. It's just, she was really overlooked in terms of the boots, so I can't give her a really high score, despite how much I did enjoy posing her around. And last but certainly not least, we have Savage Land Professor X here, looking pretty solid. When we got the Hank Pym from the West Coast Avengers 5-pack, we knew this had to be coming because it was a basic jumpsuit. So Professor X here, looking pretty solid in all his greens. Got some boots. And in terms of articulation points that bother me, the torso doesn't crunch very far back or forward, sorry. And one thing that I do like is he has a double ball at the neck. So he has one here at the base of the head and one at the base of the neck. You do see some like scuffage here at the black like undershirt on the neck, but you can use that to really get some good range there despite it only being a ball peg. Aside from that, I don't have any real points about the rest of the body. It looks good. He's got some X's on the shoulders there, and yeah, looks pretty solid through and through. He does have a set of fisted hands and a set of trigger finger hands that go side to side. Not the best choice. I would say a set of grip hands would have been better, but maybe these were the only ones they had molded with the detail, because it does have some like line work to be gloves on here. So there's that. And then we have a, mental telepathy touch the forehead or the temple look for Professor X. This one also has a side-to-side hinge. Looks pretty solid there. And then my favorite accessory of the bunch is this Cerebro helmet, even though he didn't really need that in the Savage Land. But I like this design. I really like this as a just Cerebro helmet in general. And yeah, it just fits on nicely there. I do believe it still has a plug for the previous effect we got if you choose to use that for your Professor X or not. But yeah, it looks pretty solid. So what are my final thoughts on Professor X? So Professor X here is solid. Much like Jean Grey's X Factor, I wasn't intending to build out a whole Savage Land display when I started collecting, but it seems like I will be. I've got Kazar, I've got a Sauron, I've now got Professor X. I need to finish Zabu, and maybe get my hands on the new Shauna in the 3-pack eventually. I missed out when the pre-orders went up, sadly, but I will still try to track her down at some point. So yeah, to fill out a Savage Land collection, I think this is a pretty solid figure. You know, he's got that issue with the torso that I mentioned. And the trigger finger hands are a little odd. I did use them for a couple photos, but, you know, I would have much preferred some grip hands, like some C grips, not some trigger finger hands, because I don't usually put a gun in Professor X's hands. But otherwise, you know, it's a solid figure. I don't have a lot to say. It's not one that I necessarily was like excited about, but it's one that I got, you know, for the collection. In terms of fun factor, I'm going to say no. It's not the most dynamic of figures. I do appreciate the accessories that he does come with, but I wouldn't say it was an overall, like, extra fun experience. Then for a final rating, I'm going to give him a 7.5 out of 10. You know, it's not my most wanted look for Professor X, although I do hope that this, you know, getting a jumpsuit Professor X means we can now get a future Professor X from the Wolverine and the X-Men cartoon. He's in like a blue jumpsuit in that with some extra, you know, parts on him. So maybe now that we've got that one, we can get that version and I'll have that proudly displayed in my collection. But for this figure, it's a solid release, but not much more than that. You know, I didn't need this look overall, but I'm glad that we have it for people that wanted it more than me. Alright, and that was my quick fire review of these 5 X-Men Marvel Legends figures: Destiny and Rogue 2-pack, Banshee, and then X-Factor, Jean Grey, and Savage Land Professor X. Let me know what you thought of this review down in the comments below. Have you gotten all these figures? What are your thoughts on them? Leave everything down in the comments below. And while you're down there, make sure you are liking the video and subscribing, because I've got all kinds of reviews, all kinds of unboxings, just videos upon videos coming to the channel very, very soon. So make sure you are subscribed so you can see all of that. And with all of that out of the way, I will talk to you all in another video, another post, another time.